Hey guys, welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. Today is going to be my story time about the time I walked a mile with a fractured hip. I have this thing where like in certain points in my life like something happens to me. So in elementary school it was that every year I got pink eye, like starting in 1st grade through 5th grade, every year without fail I'd get pink eye. In middle school, so 6th through 8th grade, every year without fail I'd get laryngitis, and as a singer that was hard. In high school, every year without fail, I would end up in the ER either because of an allergic reaction or a broken bone or both. You know, like, I think it was sophomore year, I ended up in the ER once because of allergies and once because of a broken bone. Yeah, so I'm very accident prone and sickness prone, but my immune system's gotten better, so luckily I'm not getting as sick. But anyways, so I was in 12th grade, because in the US that's the last year of high school, and I broke my hip, and this is how it happened. My last year of high school, I got my license, but my parents didn't really want me driving to school because I lived 30 miles from my high school. I lived in East San Jose, and my high school was in Palo Alto. If you know the Bay Area, yeah, that's a pretty long drive. And, you know, I'd have to drive 60 miles a day, and, you know, my parents were like, you've only had your license for a few months, we don't really want you doing this. And I was like, all right. And the first semester of my senior year, I took the train to school, because in the Bay Area, the Caltrain is what takes you from, actually goes from Gilroy to San Francisco, but the most common hub is San Jose to San Francisco, and it makes a stop in Palo Alto, so that's how I get to school. But again, my parents were like, we don't want you driving. So I was like, okay, well, I have to get to school somehow, so one of you is gonna have to drop me off at the train station so I can get to school. And I remember, yeah, this was the day I had modern European literature as my first class. I'll explain why that's important later. But I was like, all right, Winnie, I'll have to take me to the train station so I can get to school. So my dad drove me. And it was spring, or not spring, it was, I want to say January. Yeah, it was January. And so it was, you know, kind of cloudy, rainy, you know, gross, because that's how it is in the wintertime. And I was, you know, I had to wear a uniform for middle and high school. So I was, you know, in my, like, whatever uniform, and I was wearing layers because it was cold, and I was wearing Ugg boots. That turned out to be a very bad idea. But, yeah, so I first went to Starbucks because, you know, senior year of high school, you're dying and you need coffee. So my dad took me to Starbucks, and then we got to the train station. It turned out my train was leaving in, like, 2 minutes. So I like jumped out of my dad's car, ran to the ticket machine, bought my ticket, and then with my backpack, my coffee in hand, and my ticket in the other hand, started running to the platform. A lot of the Caltrain platforms are slick cement, like not just like cement like the rough kind, but like the slick kind. So if you're not careful, bad things will happen. So I'm running, and I hear the train coming, like I hear the horn, and I'm just like, ah, like no, I'm gonna miss it. And if I was late to class, I was gonna get detention because I'd been late so many times to school. Again, that's what happens when you live so far away, but I guess the person in charge of attendance didn't care that I was the only student making a commute of 60 miles every day. But anyways, so I'm running because I don't want to be late. Hi, cat. And as I'm making a turn, because you had to make like a sharp turn to get into the tunnels that led you out into the platform, I feel my legs slip out from under me because I was wearing Uggs, and Uggs have no traction. So I feel like my feet go this way and my body go this way and just go, and I just hit the ground hard. My coffee sort of spills, but I managed to hold it upright. So I managed to like here I've got like my protein shake. So I managed, and it was like open. So if you hear meowing, that's my cat, by the way. So I'm filming. Do you mind? Okay. So like the coffee kind of spills around, and it's like, you know, like in the lid or whatever, but I kept like most of my coffee, which was really impressive. And a woman who, like, saw everything happen was like, "Are you okay? Like, do you need help?" And I'm like, "I'm good. I need a sec, I need a train, nah." And I get up and I feel this sharp pain in my hip. And like I knew something was wrong, but I was like, I can't miss my train, I can't be late. So I get up and I hobble slash run-ish as fast as I can, and I make it like just as the doors close. And I get on the train, and it was a bullet train, which means like it gets you to school faster. So if I'd missed this bullet train, I would have had to get the next train and I would have been late. So I was like, oh, I made it. So I'm sitting down, I'm drinking my coffee, and then did I text? No, I called my dad and I'm like, yeah, hey, so I slipped on my way to the train and I'm in a lot of pain, but I think I'm okay, but just letting you know I almost missed my train. And he's like, okay, like, let me know if, you know, like, if you're not okay, you know, whatever, because my parents knew I was very accident prone. Jason, do you mind? I will let you out when I'm done with this video. My cat wants to sit on the balcony, but it's raining and there's construction going on and I'm filming this, so he's gonna have to wait his turn. Or I'll just hold him. What? What's wrong? Okay. So I get on the train and I get to school, and I had recently gotten into a fight with one of my friends, and I was hoping like she'd be able to take me to school, but because I was stupid and we fought over something stupid, because that's what high school students do, and this is totally my fault. She didn't do anything. I was the stupid one who was mad at her for like the stupidest reason. But I had no way of getting a ride to school, so I had to walk, and the train station was about a mile away from my school, but I knew the way to get there, and I got there with like 40 minutes to spare, so I was like, okay, you know, I can get, or not 40, like 25, 30 minutes, so I was like, okay, I can walk to school in like 15 minutes and I'll make it and I'll be fine. And so I start walking and I'm just like, my hip. Like, I was in pain, but, you know, I did black belt training, and I got my black belt when I was 13, so I learned to become very pain tolerant. So I was just like, I'm in a lot of pain, but you know what? I gotta get to school, so I'm just gonna suck it up and keep walking. And I get to school. And my modern European literature teacher was always fairly early to school. He had a worse commute than I did. So he'd, like, leave his place super early and get to school super early. So he was, you know, in the classroom, so I get there, I drop my stuff off, and I'm just like, hey, I'm in a lot of pain. I slipped at the train platform this morning and, like, hit my hip pretty hard. Can I go grab some ice before class? Because we had, like, in our gym, we had an area, like, where you could get, like, first aid and, like, where the trainer was for all the athletes. I wasn't an athlete. I stopped doing karate when I was 13, and I never did sports again. But, you know, like, there was ice I could use, like, for my hip. And he was like, yeah, no, go ahead, like, please, take care of yourself, because he also knew I was very accident prone. So I go, I get my ice, and then I get back to class, and I'm just kind of, like, icing myself the entire time, and I'm, like, sitting, like, I can't really show you on the chair, but you know how you, like, put more weight on one side of your body? Like, I was sitting like that, and my classmates were all just like, are you okay? And I was like, nah, but I'll live, you know, whatever. The day goes on. I'm still mad at my friend. That was so stupid. But at lunchtime, I'm like sitting with this friend and a few other people, and I'm in so much pain at this point. Like, it was getting to the point where if I had to rate it out of 10, I was hitting like 8, 8.5. Like, it was pretty bad at that point. And I had been getting ice throughout the day, and, you know, a few of my friends were like, are you okay? Like, you don't look too good. And I'm just like, I'm fine. I'll live. But by the time we get to the last class of the day, like, my pain is now at like an 8.5, 9, and I'm just like, I'm gonna call my parents because I can't do this anymore. So I call my mom, and she comes to get me. And she takes me to the doctor, and luckily my doctor was like a 5-minute drive from my school. Like, actually was right next to the train station, conveniently. So she takes me, and I get there, and the doctor's like, all right, we're gonna do some x-rays because you had a pretty bad fall, and we just want to make sure, you know, everything's okay in there. So we do that. The x-rays come back, and I'll insert a picture here if I can find it. I had a crack going down my hip bone. A crack. Like, it was fractured. I had a hip fracture. And when I told my doctor, like, yeah, I walked from the train station to my school, she was like, you walked to school with a fractured hip? And I was like, of course I did. And because it's like, you know, like with, if you break your arm, like you can get a sling. If you break your leg, you can get a cast. You can't really get a cast for your hip. So they basically told me, like, well, you can't really be in a wheelchair because you'd be, like, lopsided and it wouldn't really help you. So I still had my crutches from the year before when I broke my foot. I'll link that story time below. But yeah, I had to use those crutches. So for the next, I think it was a month? It wasn't as long as when I broke my foot, but for like a few weeks at least, I was on crutches again. And my friends and classmates were like, what did you do this time? And I was like, well, I broke my hip. And they were like, oh, no wonder you were in so much pain. And I'm like, uh-huh. Oops. And yeah, that's what happened. You know, I'm fine now. Like, my hip is healed. I probably have some, I don't know, when I die and someone examines my bones, they might see that my hip has some, like, weird bone because that's where I broke it. But that's the time I walked a mile with a fractured hip. I had been planning to be in a dance production, and rehearsals were supposed to start, like, the weekend after I broke my hip, and I ended up having to, like, tell them, you know, I broke my hip. I'm gonna have to drop out, or at least miss, like, the first half of rehearsals. And at that point, it's like, you know, it's not worth it to be in it if you're gonna miss the first half of rehearsals. So I was not able to be in that, and I was sad. But, you know, luckily, since then, I have not broken a bone. Fingers crossed I never break a bone again. Or if I do, let it be the lower half of my body, because I need my hands and wrists to do music things. So, moral of the story, if you're going anywhere, don't get there like 2 minutes before, because you're gonna rush and you might hurt yourself like I did. Don't get into stupid fights with your friends, because if I hadn't gotten into a stupid fight with my friend, I wouldn't have had to walk a mile. And yeah, that's really all I can come up with for this one, but thanks for listening. I will be back with more videos. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, like this video, subscribe, go to my social media. I hang out on Twitter and Instagram a lot, and I post on my Facebook page with music-related things. And yeah, talk to you later.